Let's discuss with Washington Post opinion columnist Jason Rezaian and lead global security analyst for Washington Post Intelligence, Josh Rogin. Thank you both for being with us. I do want to get your reactions to what we just heard there from President Trump. But Jason, I actually wanted to give you the opportunity to correct the record on something that a previous guest said, Chris Matthews, when he was talking about the Washington Post, that the paper didn't address the murder of Khashoggi today with this visit of MBS to the White House.
We actually addressed it beginning yesterday when I wrote a column about the visit in advance of this. Obviously, this is something that I've been aware of for several weeks that the Crown Prince was coming. But for the past 7+ years that the Washington Post has been not only covering closely, but trying to get accountability around. Josh and I worked very closely in the same section with Jamal Khashoggi. This is something that I take very personally. So thank you for the opportunity to clear the record.
Of course. And what did you make of this visit and what we heard from the president?
Well, it's clear that when the United States abandoned its role as the defender of human rights around the world, the bad guys expand their human rights abuses with impunity. And that's what we're seeing here. I mean, you don't have to go all the way back to 2018. MBS killed a journalist in June, a journalist named Turki Al-Jasser, who was alleged to have run a Twitter account critical of the Saudi royals' corruption, and he was executed. If there was a trial, we never saw it. So these crimes and human rights violations by MBS and his regime are ongoing. Dissidents in jail, human rights activists in jail, women's rights activists in jail. A person that I know named Saeed Al-Mahdi, who is an American citizen, 75 years old, was sentenced to 16 years for tweeting about MBS. And he's not in jail anymore, but he can't leave Saudi Arabia. He's on an exit ban. So the human rights abuser can come to Washington, but an American citizen who did nothing wrong cannot come home to Washington. And that's a direct result, in my view, of the U.S. government abandoning its position under the Trump administration as a defender of human rights, both in the United States and abroad.
I want to remind everybody of a quote from the time. The current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, in 2018 said there's no amount of money that can buy back our credibility on human rights. He was vehemently opposed to the whitewashing of this crime at the time. But he was there at the White House alongside President Trump and MBS today.
And it was 2018 during Trump's first term when the CIA concluded that Khashoggi's murder was done at the direction of the Crown Prince, who today called it a mistake. He didn't say he did it, right? But he did say it was a mistake. And there was also a sort of a Saudi inquest into it as well that found a lot of details kind of about certainly the specifics of it, but that blamed a lot of other people. This was Trump's administration that had this finding of fault.
It was a very strong assessment by the entire intelligence community based on investigation, based on facts. So, you know, anybody can choose to believe a report or not, but these people are paid to do this work. They are our intelligence community. They are the best in the business, and they confirmed with high probability that Mohammed bin Salman was responsible for this murder.
A mistake is not a murder is not a mistake. That's a murder. Okay, to call him, nobody accidentally murders someone.
Right.
You know, if I trip and fall, that's a mistake. If I, make an error in adding two numbers together, that's a mistake. A murder is an intentional, egregious, violent act. And this murder took a lot of planning, a lot of coordination. There was a cover-up. They had a decoy Jamal walk around afterwards pretending to be Jamal so we would think that he wasn't murdered. And the body has never been recovered. There's been no real accountability for the people who directed the murder, including MBS. So even to call it a mistake is not only an insult to Jamal and his family, and it's an insult to all of the people who are facing the end of their lives and their livelihoods because MBS and his regime think that any criticism of them or their actions or their government is worthy of killing you.
It's an important point. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about MBS's desire to modernize Saudi Arabia, and there's no doubt. There have been changes in that society, perhaps some social freedoms that didn't exist before, but all the people who were driving the advocacy around women driving or other freedoms within the society, things that we've taken for granted in this country forever, ended up in prison or dead.
Yeah. You mentioned something a moment ago, Josh, and I just wanted to pull on that thread because it's notable that it wasn't necessarily just the Trump administration that has sort of opened the door for MBS and a positive relationship with Saudi Arabia and the United States. You had former President Joe Biden saying that Saudi Arabia would become or would be solidified as the pariah that it is, and speaking in harsh terms about the murder of your former colleague. And yet there was a fist bump, there was handshake, there was sort of a seeking of solid relations between the two countries. So is it a sort of cynical view of the world that the United States has to foster this relationship in order to maintain stability in the Middle East, or is it just good politics?
It was good politics when Joe Biden campaigned on making Saudi a pariah state, and then it was good practical business compromise for him and his cohort to totally reverse that position when he was in office. The bottom line is, for Democrats and Republicans dealing with despotic, brutal regimes, money talks. And neither party has a clean record. But at least the Biden administration purported to stand up for human rights and didn't call murder victims controversial guys and things happen. And so, yeah, the Biden administration had a lot of hypocrisy on human rights, but the Trump administration has removed that hypocrisy by just not being for human rights at all. And meanwhile, destroying the human rights bureaus in the State Department, destroying USAID, leaving millions of people without vital assistance, abandoning internet freedom programs for dissidents all over the world, including in Iran and Saudi Arabia, and basically taking America out of the role of being the defender of human rights abroad. So yeah, the Biden administration wasn't great on this. But this is much, much worse, and we're seeing the results in countries all over the world where, again, murderers and despots and dictators are increasing their human rights abuses with impunity as the world watches.
Jason, I want to ask you, you were imprisoned for a long period of time in Evin prison by Iran, so you certainly know about the harshest treatment of journalists by, some of the harshest treatment of journalists by government. That's not exactly what we saw today, but what we saw was a certainly uncharacteristic treatment of journalists for America, maybe not Trump. As Trump was threatening, was saying that he thought the license should be pulled for ABC. Just for the reporter, the chief White House correspondent for ABC News doing her job and asking this important question. And I wonder what you thought of that moment.
Look, I was listening to that moment. I think I applaud her for being doing her job and not standing down. And when I hear about attempts by Saudi Arabia to potentially buy media companies in the United States and wield that kind of power, it scares the hell out of me, right? We can still do our job in this country. The four of us at this table can still get out here, talk about this, criticize the U.S. government. The threats coming from this president towards journalists aren't new. He did it throughout his first term. They're not new internationally. Many people do it, and folks like us continue to do our jobs. But the heat behind our backs is getting higher and higher, and the concern for me is the self-censorship that's beginning to happen in our industry, and really the safety of people doing this job.
Jason Rezaian, Josh Rogin, we appreciate you having the conversation. Thanks so much.